Welcome back to the Revitalist podcast, where we are changing the narrative of mental health. And today I'm sitting in the British Virgin Islands with an amazing facilitator who I work side by side with on several projects, Jillian Flaherty. So Jillian, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me, Katie.
Yeah. So today we're going to talk about a lot of things and questions, right, with facilitating psychedelic retreats. So the neat thing about Jillian and I is we come from really traditional medicine, right? We're trained traditionally. My degree's in nursing and anesthesia and psych, and then Jillian's degree in therapy. Yeah. But Jillian, tell them a little bit more about your history, like your skill sets, because I love to hear your stories, some of your training.
Yeah, I have a pretty eclectic background. So I've been a licensed therapist for 14 years. And I started my career working with sexually aggressive adolescents and adults, so in residential facilities, in jails, prisons, working with risk assessments and psychoeducation and general therapy with individuals and families. I did that for about 6 or 7 years, and then I decided I needed to really switch gears. I started working with new moms, pregnant and new moms, with doing perinatal mood research. And I helped build a program at Atrium in Charlotte called the Maternal Wellness Program, which is still going to this day. So we provided individual and group therapy to women with postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, and even, mental health issues during their pregnancy. We helped to build an inpatient unit for those women. And during that time, the Integrative Psych unit at Atrium started using Spravato on a few of the clients. And there were a few that I saw afterwards. And through talking to some of the psychiatrists, I heard about some pretty negative outcomes, solely because they were administering in an area that wasn't conducive to good treatment. So that was my first introduction to ketamine and working with psychedelics in a professional setting. And then at that time, I was moving to Raleigh with my husband for his job, and I found out about Revitalist. So I've been working with Revitalist for about 3 years now.
Yeah.
I just feel crazy. It's an adventure.
Yeah, I mean, that's a couple of things there. One, your background, like just the diversity of it. Like, yeah. I love diverse backgrounds, especially with psychedelics.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
But that's kind of the neat thing, with psychedelics. One, it's new, right? So you want somebody who can come in with a diverse background.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've noticed since we started Revitalist, and you've noticed this too. We may think you have like the perfect candidate as a provider or a therapist who's going to do great in this space. And then they get in and you see, okay, wait a minute, because there's not really specific job descriptions yet, right? With all of this. So like you being right with people that are, aggressive adolescents versus moms, pregnant moms who are very vulnerable population, who are very protecting of their baby, internally. And then after, baby's born, then you've got mom who may be struggling with their mental health and then working, on a relationship capacity. Like there's so many different things there.
Yeah. And mental health doesn't discriminate, it impacts anybody and everybody. So there is a lot of commonalities in this work, and with psychedelics especially, and the word that comes to mind is, shame. There's a lot of people that are nervous to seek help, or they don't want to talk about it, or they don't want people to know, whether it's for professional reasons, or maybe their traditional belief systems don't support that sort of work. So there's lots of commonalities, but you're right. It's good to have a very diverse background, because you're gonna work with all kinds of people. There's not a profile for clients that seek psychedelics.
That's right. Yeah,
they're all walks of life.
All walks of life, yeah. And then when you kind of I feel like people, when we finally get to the point of where we want to improve our mental health or improve our wellness, you're in that space to where you're advocating for yourself, but are you truly advocating for exactly what you need? And not everybody knows that, right? I mean, psychedelics and we have fever get lost. All the energies of the universe are coming here. But yeah, so, I think people who start advocating for themselves, moving towards the direction they feel like they need to go, they may not always have the North Star that's needed, even though they think they do. And that's one thing with these retreats is, a lot of times when people kind of enter the space of psychedelic medicine, their viewpoint gets shifted or turned or just altered, just a touch or scotch, like I like to say scotch. But it just gets moved just a little bit to where they feel more alignment with, now that makes more sense.
Yeah, they become their inner healer. Part of them that had to advocate for themselves to seek help. I mean, that's often the hardest part for people. I mean, just navigating that system in itself is a beast. Like, where do you go? Who takes my insurance? How much time do I have to do this? There's so many barriers that people experience, and that usually is a window where people will either not seek care or they wait till they're in an acute state and it becomes a crisis. But with psychedelics, you become your own advocate in so many ways. You're your own inner healer. It allows you to really go inward, because when you're in a state where things are really challenging, you often rely on your external world to drive your decisions. So going as inward as possible kind of takes those layers off.
And I think it's learning to trust the process, right?
Yeah.
Because in mental health now, there is necessarily no trusting of the process. There is the end result solution of, we're going to make your symptoms better or more or less severe, I guess.
Yes.
Whereas psychedelics, it's a true process. It's like, you get to like see your book of life almost, and then you get to feel more aligned with yourself and your purpose and your values.
Yeah.
And then you get to grow in the areas to where you're like, I have no idea how to do that, and you feel that, like you feel you don't have any idea how to do that. And it doesn't come from a sense of shame. It comes from a sense of, okay.
That starts to go away when you empower your own self,
Yeah. And then when you see it, right, because, what I see and what you see too, right, when the ketamine space and states is we see people who have advocated for themselves for years.
Yeah.
They have become their own warrior with advocating, but nobody has truly taught them how to heal.
Yeah.
And that's the difference, right? So these people who are like, I've tried everything, psychedelics won't work. They will, because it's a completely different viewpoint than what you've been trying to do for the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 years sometimes. Yeah. And, and that's kind of the piece of it. So, people who, it's like, how do they know when it's time to like seek a wellness retreat? What examples could you give? Because it's not like people come and saying, I'm struggling, I'm recognizing it's me, not everybody else.
Yeah.
Like, what state of mind are they in sometimes?
I mean, there's so many reasons why people seek these out, but curiosity, that's the word that comes to mind. Curiosity, whether it's you're one of those people that have tried everything out there and it's like, well, this is good.
My last option.
Yeah,
we've heard that so much too.
Yeah, or curiosity based off of like having friends or others that they heard have tried psychedelics. I want to try it too. So they feel more safe, going into an experience where there's staff in place. They're in an area where it's legal, so that anxiety is removed. But curiosity, I mean, that would be my opinion, in all sorts of ways.
So what if like an example, right, would be, I mean, when I see people or I think about things, so if I think about like, a male person, and maybe that male person feels like, their relationship with their wife or their partner is not what it used to be. They don't feel as connected to their kids. They feel like they're just an ATM and everybody just needs money and that's their only role in life is being this, right?
Yeah.
Like those people, to me, are excellent people to look at going into psychedelic retreats because they're in survival mode.
Yeah.
You know, and the relationships that are around them, that are their most vulnerable and most important relationships, are getting destroyed. And everybody's isolating themselves, right? So we see a lot of these men sometimes who will take their own lives between the ages of 40, 50 years old. And everybody's like, they were fine. I didn't know they had depression. And it's like, they don't have depression, right? They just, a lot of times they don't. They're completely isolated and disconnecting from their life. They feel like this is the next best option. And so people who ever have, you know, thoughts of like wanting to hurt themselves or I would just be better off not being here. Like those are the people or the ones who say, I'm not going down the road of medicine. Like I'm not doing that. I'm not starting with talk therapy. That's going to take years to get through. Right. So the people who feel that way, these retreats are like so mind opening to them to where literally in 4 days, you're like, I had no idea. That was amazing.
The onion layers come off. You know, with psychedelics, your defense mechanisms melt away. And that's often the barrier in traditional therapy that takes so much time, you know, to not only take time building rapport, trust. You know, people are vulnerable seeking help, but those defense mechanisms have kept them safe for a long time for many reasons. So it's harder to maybe get to something that's more challenging. So psychedelics help that. But I keep thinking about, and I'm going to butcher his last name, but his name is Mark Oxley. I'm butchering it. Sorry, Mark.
With an O.
Yeah, sorry, Mark. But he wrote a psychedelic integration book, and it's my favorite. And he breaks the work into two beautiful families. And I think we've talked about this before: ontological work and psychotherapeutic work. And ontological work is more about the broad understanding and meaning of just curiosity, or I just want to explore my own mind. You know, people that seek psychedelics are just like, I don't know, like I'm doing okay. I just want to kind of see what's out there. I want to try it. I want to see if there's any areas in my life I want to improve. It's a very macro level intention. And then you have the psychotherapeutic work, which people are seeking psychedelics to reduce some sort of mental health, you know, problem that they're having. So the work does look a little bit different for that type of client, at least in the integrative stance.
Sure. And a lot of times we can't see that. When somebody comes to me and says, I'm here, and the thing about, you know, them being vulnerable, like you talk about the defensive mechanisms, we have defense mechanisms up all the time in life.
They keep us safe.
But they actually get worse when we're struggling worse.
Yeah.
So you look more like a jerk or more like, you know, like I'm done. I can't do this, right? When we're truly struggling, because you don't have the capacity when you're struggling to have that self-reflection of who's trying to help me, who is in my life that I should be investing in, you know, what values do I align with? Like, where does it feel right?
Yeah.
Because nothing feels right when you're struggling, you know, and we flip that narrative on, you know, your defense mechanisms come up even more because you feel like people are starting to attack you, or you're not meeting their approvals, or you're not meeting their, you know, whatever goals they may give you, right? So it's hard. It's really, really hard.
It's part of that survival mode. It's the lizard and wizard brain. And the lizard brain is functioning in survival mode. You know, everything is just, you know, fight or flight, freeze. You know, it's when you get into that wash, rinse, and repeat kind of cycle of life where everything is just, you know, for very concrete. And then your wizard brain is that ability to take a step back, you know, question or inquire about your thoughts, or be more reflective, or have more reason in that process. You know, and that wizard brain is what we want to use all of our brain when we're functioning. But when we're in those stressed and acute states, we just function based off of our amygdala. You know, it's just what's in front of us.
We just like to inform everyone on this podcast, there is a hurricane that's close by in Jamaica, but we do this podcast out of the mission. So there might be somewhere when things are going through, but you're right. And that's the goal, right? Is that we're able to kind of sit back, reflect, and have the power. I think that's what people don't understand is when you're struggling with your mental health, all your energy is out here.
Yeah.
And your energy is not here. Yeah. So if you're really empowered in your mental health and wellness, you kind of, you're here and you're just kind of like this, like almost like laid back surfer who like has the wisdom of the world.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay, well, let's try it.
Absolutely.
Let's see how it works. Instead of being like, why are you doing this, Jillian? Why are you doing this? You're not helping me, and we have that reaction so much sometimes in life because it's easier again. And then you're destroying relationships around you. And then you start feeling like shame, like, why did I yell at Jillian? Like, she's done all this stuff for me. Like, why did I do that? I don't know. And then it's like self-reflection on me on, is it her? I bet it's her. And then it's like, then you get to the point you're like, oh no, she was right on something. She can't be right on everything. I've been right on all these other things. And you just have this like damning cycle of negativity that can destroy so many things.
Is the difference between reaction versus response. And when we're in that survival mode, we're reactive. Like there's no space between our thought and our behavior. It's impulsive. And then what you're talking about, that cycle of like, oh God, why did I say that? And then it just kind of feeds that loop of whether it's depression or anxiety. But when we're responsive, and it can be deep breaths. I mean, it doesn't have to be a structured activity. I mean, it's just that space between what you're thinking and what you're about to say that can mean everything.
Literally. Because what they say, like, right, when a word comes out, you can't take it back.
No. Yeah.
And words can destroy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely destroy. So talking about the retreats, right? Because people, kind of probably, I think it's a good summary of, this piece, but like the retreat that we're having here, one, why are we doing it? And then two, what makes our retreat different than maybe some of the other retreats out there? Because we're extremely unique in our retreat. But what would you say with those things?
First, to address the location, we want to pick an area that the medicine is legal. I think that's a big barrier in the States. There's so very few places. I know Oregon, you can go to Oregon for treatment, Colorado. But outside of that, there's not really, a lot. And there are underground things that people are doing. But, a lot of clients want to go somewhere where they feel safe. They're not going into the experience with that additional anxiety. So we're going to pick a place where it's going to be legal. We're also picking a place where you have a beautiful set and setting, that safety set and setting. Those, you hear those words in anything with psychedelics, and those three are the most important things with the work. So safety-wise, we always have a 1-to-1 ratio. In the event of if we have bigger retreats, we have adjunct staff that come to ensure that safety. We want a beautiful area. We want natural elements. Not only do they serve as therapeutic anchors for people during the ceremony, it's an experience. I mean, just flying out here and getting here is an adventure in itself. And then to finally land in an area where you can just kind of decompress, exhale, you're somewhere new. That's so important with psychedelics too. I mean, even down to the music, you want new things. So coming somewhere new is therapeutic in itself. We also have, fully trained staff with licenses that have been trained in this area with different modalities. We have medical staff. We have clinical mental health staff, which might be different than some other retreats. It's kind of the Wild West in psychedelics right now. There's lots of coaching and different types of therapy. So we make sure to have licensed clinicians on staff.
I think that's the biggest thing, right? With these retreats, we really focus on legalities and safety because we believe in this space so much. We want it validated so it can grow.
Yeah.
And that's how we can, increase access to all those things. And, I think the neat thing with us, right, is we're licensed providers in the States. So we have been trained to be ethically bound. And that's
By law.
big thing. By law. That's correct. And on every level, right, of ethics, we've had so many ethics classes, with all these different pieces. And we are held to like the highest law of ethical responsibilities. And that's something, with psychedelics, when people read about them sometimes, it's like, am I going to be safe? Is somebody going to try to take advantage of me when I'm in this space, right? And especially females, men too, yes. But females, when they're coming down to a different country, like if they come down by themselves, you and I do this, it's pretty atypical, I guess, for women to travel, single women, or to be traveling by themselves internationally.
Talking about that the other day, we're flying into these beautiful vacation spots, and we're solo on the plane, and so it's really interesting when people are like, "What are you doing here? Where's your crew?" And it's like, well, then you get into the story of what we're doing, and
the flights are always a good sales call.
Yeah.
True. But that's something too, right? Is like ethics, safety, a trusting environment to where, if you don't know, we will help you to learn.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter your question, right? It's like, am I going to lose my mind? I hear so many people saying that with psychedelics, because people have talked about that, right? Like with LSD, if you do LSD, you may lose your mind like 26 years, all of a sudden, nobody knows why, and what we're seeing is like, it's all about awareness.
Yeah.
And the psychedelics allow us to, we work with the psychedelics. They lead us per se to help that person to become more aware, which gives a lot more clarity. And once that clarity is kind of established, then we can look at integrating.
Yeah.
And then when you integrate, that gives you like what you said the other day, which I thought was really, really prominent, where you talked about like one psychedelic experience may be the one thing that you had that you grow off of for the rest of your life. Right?
Yeah.
Because it can be a pivotal moment.
Absolutely.
In 4 days, right? It's not like, we'll get all these medicines that need to be on for at least 6 weeks before you start noticing anything. If your risk of suicide increases, then call 911 or go to the closest CR.
Yeah.
Right? That's our system right now. It's like, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Like the first time I ever came, to the retreats, and I saw like, if you can see the view behind me, you've got the ocean, you've got the mountains. And it's like, and you're seeing people like heal and become like their ultimate empowered self.
Yeah, because the psychedelics, psychedelic medicine, does its beautiful work on a cellular level. We know what it does to the brain, but it's bringing out what people already have within them that they aren't aware of. So, because these insights that people have coming out of their journeys, we didn't tell them what that was like or give them any sort of, you will experience these things. That all everything is already within someone. It brings it out.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So what do the retreats look like? I want to do a retreat. I have no idea. I just know I'm stuck.
Yeah.
What does it look like when I finally make it to the British Virgin Islands, when I land there? What happens next? Like, what does that itinerary look like? What can I expect?
Well, prior to landing, we would do some prep work with the clients. We would have, initial calls to really give everybody an idea, an overview of what we're doing and what to expect. And then we have a prep call with the group before the retreat, just kind of like a mini meet and greet, a Q&A, answer any sort of last minute questions, and just kind of get everybody ready. But upon arrival, usually on the first day, everybody's coming in, traveling from different areas at different times. We're getting settled in. The first night is a nice dinner together, which is a really nice kind of opening ceremony where people start to share, what even brought them to do this, and that helps everybody, build a little bit of rapport in that way. And then, moving into the rest of the retreat, we wake up early, we have a structured activity, whether it's yoga, breath work, or Pilates. And then after that, we go into integration and prep groups. We wouldn't necessarily have an integration group yet before the ceremonies because there's nothing really to integrate. But an intention setting group, we could have multiple of those, because sometimes people don't have something specific as to what they're looking for. Maybe somebody has something general or broad, and that's okay too. And then we have, all 3 meals and snacks are covered the whole retreat. We build 2 excursions into the retreat as well, and those are different based on the weather and kind of what's going on, but lots of beach activities, kayaking, paddleboard, stand-up paddleboard, hiking. Depending on the weather, we'll have different things, sound bowls. And then we have two psilocybin ceremonies, typically in the evening, given again, weather dependent. If we're in the BVIs or Jamaica, of course, it's super hot, depending on that time of the year. So we tend to have things later in the evening. And then after the ceremonies, we build in integrative groups into the schedule as well. So that's where we make sense of all of this and what we're doing, and we try to make all of the parts whole. That personally, that's my favorite part of this work, is integration, because I'm witnessing and just holding space during those ceremonies. So I have no idea what's going on in someone's mind. I'm watching them. I can tell. I'm observing them. I can tell when someone is maybe struggling, or something beautiful is happening, or they're laughing, and then those are experiences, during those integration groups where we could talk about patterns that were observed, and like what was happening in that time. So that's my personal favorite part, is all of the integrative work, because you can do psychedelics, but what you do with that experience is so important.
Yeah. I think that's the neat thing. We have people sometimes, they'll be like, can I record myself during the session, but you're in the ceremony? Because that was so amazing.
Yeah.
And literally, most people will just kind of lay.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, you see nothing. It looks like the most boring thing. They look relaxed per se.
Yeah.
And there's so much amazing stuff going on internally.
Yeah.
That that's what they want to record, is what's going on internally, because we didn't even understand that our brain had these capacities.
Yes.
And it does, like, constantly it has this capacity to look at all these things and to hold on to all these aspects. But I always tell people that, like, psychedelics help us to bring Oz to the front, right? And then we can say, all right, Oz, what's going on,
Yeah.
And as long as we can kind of sit there with it and recognize it, I think that's a really, really big piece. So that's kind of the neat thing, like when you're talking about the excursions and all that stuff. And then with our backgrounds, people who come here, right? So it could be, a healthy 30-year-old. It could be someone who has been diagnosed with a terminal illness, who, may not be able to go up and down steps, to where they're looking for that next kind of, transition with palliative medicine. And that's the neat thing, with the activities that you talked about, is when we look at all these people from all their different backgrounds, we do look at, like, okay, are you the type to where you would like to go on a hike? And is that going to be appropriate for you?
Yes.
So, but all those people, we really accommodate and pivot and shift to where we make it the most applicable for everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I, thinking about what makes us stand out too, I think we have a beautiful marriage of qualitative and quantitative data. So when we are talking about these integrative groups, that's our qualitative work, right? It's like people talking about how much better they feel, or the insights that they've gained. And then we have quantitative data. We will use EEGs. We check vitals. We've done neurofeedback. I mean, there's been things that there's all kinds of quantitative data that we have as well. So I think that's something very different that I haven't seen at other places.
Right. I agree with that. And that's a piece of it too, right? Is a lot of people will advocate for the plant, and they're right. The plant's amazing and it's been here for thousands of years. But there's a lot of people who don't believe in bringing any type of, labs or EEGs or things, because they're afraid they're going to mess up the traditional aspects. And my personal opinion is, well, internationally, we are in a global crisis, or we're in both, right?
Yeah.
But we're just in this crisis to where this plant was put on this earth, and people were put on this earth. And just because maybe I live in a different, geographical location, does that mean that my life is not as worthy as everyone else's? Yeah. So I think that's the, beautiful thing that we do here is bring this amazing natural medicine to everyone to give access to the entire world in a very safe, ethically aligned, trusting environment to where the only reason we're looking at EEGs in labs is because we're trying to help advance this field, right? Because when people, when they're in this space and they're trying to take it to the next level of when do I need to get help? How often do I need to come to retreats, right? We're putting all this responsibility on the person to make all these really life-changing / life-ending sometimes decisions. And if we're able to put it on a diagnostic level to where people can consistently hey, I don't know, maybe let me get checked. And maybe your labs show that your inflammatory cytokines are just up right now. It's hey, great time to go get a ketamine infusion or a psychedelic retreat if because you're right there where you need to be. And we know that these work, on an anti-inflammatory level as well. Because if you think about physics, there's so many beings. But if you think about physics, when something's in alignment, it actually has the lesser amount of energy because it's all aligned versus if a machine is off base, right? And all this energy is going externally.
Yeah.
So we're spending all of our energy stores and then we're sitting there asking you, how do you feel? Why do you feel like that? And honestly, people who, as you know, when we're struggling with our mental health, we're like, I don't know, I just don't feel right.
Yeah, it's hard to identify.
It is. It's like this big old bubble of pressure and you can't see where the storm starts and where it stops. You're just in the middle of this nastiness and you don't feel right. And when you're in that space, you are so vulnerable.
Absolutely.
And, but you objectively, right? Because a lot of people who come to us for ketamine in the States, their family member will usually sometimes say, did you look at this? So you get to this space to where you stop trusting yourself because you just don't feel right. And then you start trying to trust people around you who you think may have your best intentions in mind. So, if you are a family member looking at this podcast, it's and if you have these people in your mindset, and you think that this would be applicable for them, it's recommend this to them, right? To where they can consider it. And if you want to come with them, I think that's the neat thing is family members absolutely can come with clients, the only thing that we do with that piece, right, is during the ceremony, that's a sacred space to where the only people participating in the ceremony are the people who are participating with the medicine.
Yeah.
But, but family members, we still lodge you and feed you and, do all this stuff and really try to keep you engaged because people forget the unit support that's needed.
Absolutely.
Every day.
And family and loved ones are big sources of evidence for well-being as well. We'll have clients that maybe can't even identify on their own that they're feeling better, but their family members have noticed. Their family members have picked up on oh yeah, you're less grouchy, or you've been waking up on time more often, and maybe that individual hasn't picked up on that evidence yet, of oh, you're right, I have, that support network is needed. And that's part of integration too, is using your resources, and part of your resources are who's your village? Who's going to be there for you after this experience to help witness and support your journey after the fact.
Yeah. And I think too, we always say family members and friends. And thinking about self-reflection here, your family member and your friends can move at times, and it's not always your biological family or your friends that you chose, in life, because, my family, they always know that I'm hit or miss, once every 6 months kind of thing, versus, the friends that I've been friends with since kindergarten. I talk to them once a year, but my family and friends really is my work environment, right? So it's those are the people that see you, and when you look at the community, they're your village, and it's a daily thing. So it's the people that are seeing you on a daily level, they see your value, but it's also something to where when they bring it up, hey, are you eating? Are you getting enough rest?
Yeah.
Have you thought this through kind of thing, And when they're saying that, they're coming from a sense of kindness or caring they're not necessarily always coming on a level of you're not good enough, you're not doing it right.
Yeah.
And if you start to feel that way, it's really time for an intervention, because if you don't stop that level of being insecure and being reactive and letting anger lead, or blaming others, if you don't stop that, you are going to come to your own demise, and you're going to push everybody away from you.
It's isolating to feel that way. And
Completely isolating.
when you're isolated, that's our brain thinks in extremes.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
That's right.
it's tough.
So yeah, so kind of with the psychedelic retreats, kind of the way that you and I do them. So we lead the retreats, like you said. We hold space for people should they need anything at that time, right? We're like these little baby owls that are just like sitting there like watching overhead. And if you breathe a different way,
We notice.
we pick up on it, right? But it's like this calming, like, so peaceful for us too, as we're sitting around, like looking at the view and watching, the birds and all the other stuff.
And it really is an honor and privilege to sit and witness journeys, because there's such a transformative experience for people. So even just to witness and be a part of it is a big privilege.
Yep. It's something that we believe in so much. We not only want to protect the mission, but the person, right? That's why the mission was created, for the person.
Yeah.
And if there were no people on this planet, nobody would understand the benefit of these plant medicines.
Yeah.
So that's a way, we can really kind of share, the wisdom of the world, per se.
Yeah.
And then, we're kind of like these little tiny, like, troopers and warriors on the side to help support the person.
Yeah, absolutely.
So any other, I don't know if people can see this behind us, but it looks amazing.
Yeah, but coming down.
Any other tidbits you'd like to say before we get rained out?
No, I'm happy to be here. Come visit us. It's a good thing for having.